Give me a Black female protagonist navigating a world ruled by ruthless Fae on a quest for freedom only possible through magic. This new adult fantasy will have you flipping pages on the edge of your seats, wondering if there will ever be light at the end of this dark, Fae filled tunnel. Are you ready?
The Books and Vogue podcast. Come get your favorite next book. The Books and Vogue podcast with Catherine Brad.
Welcome, book lovers, to the Books on Vogue podcast. This is your premier listening experience all about immersive reading and helping avid and reluctant readers alike imagine book characters like never before. I'm your host, Kat Trinidad. The format of the show is I introduce a book, share tips on how you can engage your senses as you read this title, because it's one thing to be a mood reader, but you get a little something extra from the story when you are a set the mood reader. And finally, I will end the show with a reimagining of my favorite scene. Today, we will discuss techniques for getting into lore of the wilds with none other than the author, Analeigh Sbrana. Welcome, Analeigh.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Please tell us about the book.
Okay, this is exciting because Lore of the Wilds is my favorite conversation ever. Lore of the Wilds is a romantasy. It's filled with cottagecore elements, found family, romance, of course, and it has some cozy elements, but it also has some dark twists and turns.
Thank you so much for that, Analeigh. Do you care to join me in a discussion of some tips for setting a reading mood?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, okay, book lovers. I hope you have your writing utensils ready because class is in session.
Hear it, see it, smell it, sense it, taste it, touch it. Hear it, see it, smell it, sense it, taste it, touch it. Hear it, see it, smell it, sense it, taste it, touch it.
The Books and Vogue podcast.
So, what is the vibe? How can we engage our spirit as we read this book?
I would say the vibe is fairy tale, cozy, aesthetic. When you're reading Lore of the Wilds, she is a foodie, and Lore is also obsessed with coffee. And so I would suggest having a hot beverage while you read.
Okay, okay. So, what is the sound of Lord of the Wilds? I know I keep wanting to say Lord, but it's Lord, Lord of the Wilds. What key notes in music or nature could set the tone as we read this novel?
I would say music. One thing that you could do is search up on Spotify or Apple Music, wherever you play your music, and look up lo-fi beats. And there are so many that you can find. There's even some that if you type in like fantasy lo-fi, it'll have it'll really take you on a journey. And the good thing about lo-fi is it's instrumental, so the lyrics won't pull you out of the book. Um, or you can always search for high fantasy playlists. Or one of my favorite things to listen to is movie soundtracks. So anything like Lord of the Rings, the Hunger Games soundtrack, anything like that. Even the Bridgerton soundtracks are amazing.
Okay, okay. So, do share the aesthetics. This could be any visuals aside from the book, such as lighting.
I would say that if you're going to be reading lore, there are a lot of very cozy moments. And so I would say dress comfortably. Be in your pajamas. Is that the aesthetic of lore? I don't know. But should you be wearing pajamas while you read? Absolutely. Every time. I would also say, a nice cozy, like preferably fuzzy robe. And if it's like in the evening after dinner, you're full, you have some cookies, the sunlight is in that golden hour, streaming through the window, lighting the page up, that's when you should do it.
Okay, okay. So I know you mentioned cookies, but can you be a little more specific? What is the flavor? Any specific food or drink companions for this title?
Okay, flavor. This is a really fun question. I would say anything spicy, like a chai flavored cookie would be ideal. Snickerdoodles with that cinnamon flavor. Um, if you're going to be drinking, I would say Earl Grey tea or chai tea latte preferably. Because it's hot and yummy and sweet and spicy and delicious, which is kind of Lore of the Wilds. Um, or like a mulled wine, like hot wine with that fresh like cinnamon stick in it, some orange slices, just really yummy.
Okay, okay. So what's the aroma? Are there any smells to transport us into the pages?
Yes, I'm going to say juniper and bergamot. I definitely feel like those two scents would be amazing. So if you have a candle to light that has bergamot scents in it, especially if it has like a black tea as well, that would be so great because Lore doesn't necessarily like tea. She does not prefer tea, but it's way easier to find in her world than coffee. So oftentimes she is drinking tea, which if you're a tea lover, you will find yourself craving.
Okay, okay. So I know you mentioned earlier warm and comfy clothing. Um, but I want to know how else can we get more of the feels?
Okay, so I would say, and this may be a little extra, but you're going to need to find a corset, preferably with flowers. You're going to need a flowing dress and or pants with a shirt with long sleeves and ties. And then you're maybe going to want to get a belt with a little spot for a dagger. And then you'll be there. Maybe find the woods, gallivant through it, and bring the book, read against a tree. Now I'm just changing it all up. Now I'm like, you know what? No, living room, we're done with that. We're actually going to leave the house, find the woods, and we can explore the forest with Lore.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Both different fields of it, get comfy or get into the world. I love it. I love both, 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 both. So, well, there you go, book lovers. These are your recommended supplies as you read this title. If you're able, pause and get some of these if available, or simply imagine because it's time for my favorite scene. Disclaimer, please note that exact words, names, locations, and/or scenarios mentioned in this reimagined reenactment may differ from the actual book. Sharing my favorite scenes I reenacted though, imagining the fiction world that I've been reading of. Going from all the things I just gave you a list. Come experience all the senses as protagonists. And it don't get more real than this. Immersive read with books on book and live vicariously. Apothecary Encounter, starring Analeigh Sbrana as Lore and the narrator, and Kat Trinidad as the Fae.
Lex, you're running late as always. It's the Fae. From the moment they could toddle, human children were taught to hide when the dark Fae ventured down from their mountain keep and stepped through the tree line that surrounded Duskmere. It was unusual for the elite order of Alatherians to be in Duskmere at all. It was unheard of that they should be in the apothecary. And yet, here they were. Their tunics were lined with exquisite, delicate lace, and both blouses were adorned with embroidery. The color of the threads was unbelievably vibrant. I couldn't imagine what flower or animal could provide a pigment that rich. Surely it was something poisonous, as anything that colorful probably needn't worry about being eaten. Their clothes dripped with wealth. It was another oddity, as the wealthy didn't come to Duskmere. The only Fae who came around were the sentries and the taxers, and even then, the sentries rarely crossed the border into Duskmere, and the taxers' visits were expected, planned like clockwork at the same time every season to bleed the human coffers dry.
It smells like dog shit in here.
It's warm amber and honey. That candle had been poured just the week before, but of course I don't say that out loud. The female's eyes narrowed at the crowded tables,
This room is too cramped.
and sagging wooden shelves eventually lingering on.
What are those?
My frayed boots. A lick of shame burned through my sternum. I glance away, sidestep stacks of handwritten books, crates of glass bottles filled with perfumes, and a cupboard bursting with dried herbs and fragrant berries, trying to ignore the heaviness of the male's eyes following my every move. Welcome, my lord, my lady. How may I be of service? I hate how much my voice shakes. Had I addressed them correctly, I bow my head, waiting for them to reply.
We're looking for the owner of this establishment.
My aunt and uncle own the shop, my lord, but they're on the other side of town by the vineyard.
The other side of town?
What could he possibly want from here that he didn't have in abundance out there? I'm happy to take you to them, I add.
You dragged me on this fool's errand when we could have sent an attendant. The human you seek isn't even here. Don't tell me you expect me to walk farther through those stinking, muddy streets.
The female's words were ugly, but the lyrical timbre of her voice was a song. She tugged on the male's sleeve again, and my eyes snagged on her nails. They were long, filed into sharp points, and painted the same color as her delicate slippers. Small embedded gems sparkled. If we didn't have to give almost all our earnings to the Alatherians, then maybe we humans could pave our streets. Perhaps I can help you find something? Every inch of the scuffed wood was covered in salves, candles, soaps made from goat's milk, and bottles of wine from my uncle's vineyard. Without this shop, Auntie Eshi and Uncle Salim wouldn't have had the resources to care for the 15 children at the orphanage.
While we are here, we should choose a present for Ro. Oh, don't look that way. It was the perfect thing. He always have fascinated with them.
We have many gifts if he's interested in us humans. I had to swallow back bile as I said interested, as if humans were little different than a newly discovered bird with peculiar featherings. As if we were little more than creatures to be examined. I walked the length of the shop and plucked a book from a shelf. It was an adventure novel, a copy of a copy, written by a person who had never been to Duskmere nor heard of the nightmare of the place. The original book had come over with the humans in the crossing. I caressed the cloth binding. I had spent weeks copying each word, finding a sort of catharsis in crafting the pages and binding the book. Unfortunately, frivolities such as books aren't something most people can afford, so I rarely have cause to do so. I eye their clothing again, and an idea begins to form. It was reckless, dangerous, and terrible all around, but I barreled on. This is the last copy of a book that came from our homeland. It's quite pricey, but it would be a perfect gift. Try not to look terrified by what I just did. Lying to a fae? Do I want to die today?
Book lovers. If you have enjoyed this sneak peek, you can get more by reading the whole book. Lore of the Wilds is available at your local library and everywhere books are sold. And if it's not, requested, because you deserve to read all the books that interest you. And if you have already read Lore of the Wilds or are in the middle of reading it, let us know in the comments what you like to do to set the mood for reading, because I would love to hear from you. So please leave your feedback. Analeigh, is there anything else you would like to share with the listeners?
Yes, first, I would like to say thank you so much for listening. I really hoped you enjoyed this. I had so much fun making this and making it special for your reader or your listeners, Kat. And I do want to say that today is my release day. Lore of the Wilds is out and about in the world. Please go find it at your bookstore, or Kat, I love your suggestion of finding it at your local library. Lore loves libraries. I love libraries. And when you read that, you will see. Thank you again.
Absolutely. And thank you again, Analeigh, for joining us today. And thank you, book lovers, for listening. With peace, love, and joy. Happy reading.
The Books and Vogue podcast. Come get your favorite next book. The Books and Vogue podcast. With Catching Red. Subscribe, listen, check out recommendations, and happy reading.